machines beeped and hummed in the white room deep under the earth. Dr. Amanda Clark watched the green liquid drain from the tall glass tank. Inside, a boy who looked about 12 years old opened his eyes for the first time. His name was Subject 47, but nobody called him that yet. Amanda had worked on this project for 3 years. The Zephyrian Empire was winning the war against humanity. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their soldiers lived longer than humans. Every month, another human colony fell to their attacks. Earth needed something new to fight back. The Genesis Project was that something new. Amanda and her team had mixed human DNA with genes from the strongest animals on Earth. They added chemicals that made bones harder than steel and muscles that never got tired. They built a brain that could learn faster than any computer. Subject 47 was the first one to live. 46 others had died in their tanks before him. The boy stepped out of the tank on shaky legs. He was naked and wet, but he did not seem cold. His skin was pale from never seeing sunlight. His hair was black, and his eyes were bright blue. He looked around the room with the careful attention of a hunter. "Hello," Amanda said softly. "Can you understand me?" The boy nodded. His voice was quiet when he spoke. "Yes, where am I?" "You are safe. You are at Blackwater Military Research Facility. I am Dr. Amanda Clark. What do you remember?" The boy thought for a moment. "Nothing. Everything is new." Amanda smiled. This was better than she had hoped. The other subjects who lived long enough to wake up had been filled with rage and pain. They attacked anything that moved. Subject 47 seemed calm and in control. "We need to run some tests," Amanda said, "to make sure you are healthy." Next week, Subject 47 amazed everyone in the facility. He could lift weights that took 3 grown men to move. He could run faster than their fastest vehicle. When they shot rubber bullets at him for testing, he dodged them all without breaking a sweat. His skin was tough enough to stop a knife. But the most amazing thing was how fast he learned. They showed him how to read on Monday. By Friday, he was reading college-level books. They taught him basic math on Tuesday. By Saturday, he was solving problems that made the scientists scratch their heads. Amanda was proud of her work, but she was also worried. Subject 47 was strong and smart, but he was still a child in many ways. He asked simple questions about the world. He wanted to know why the sky was blue and why people needed to sleep. Sometimes he would stare at the walls for hours, just thinking. Colonel Pete Jackson arrived at the facility on a cold Tuesday morning. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. He had fought the Zephyrians for 2 years and lost many good soldiers. His face was always serious, but his eyes were kind. Amanda did not want the military involved yet. "He needs more time in controlled conditions," she told the colonel. "We need to study him more." "The war will not wait for your studies," Jackson replied. "Every day we delay, more colonies fall. If this boy can help us fight, then he needs to learn how to be a soldier." Jackson brought 3 soldiers with him. Sergeant Lisa Martinez was small but tough, with quick hands and a sharp mind. Corporal Ben Wright was young and friendly, always making jokes to keep spirits up. Private First Class Danny Torres was quiet and thoughtful, the kind of soldier who noticed everything. When they first saw Subject 47, the soldiers did not know what to think. He looked like a normal boy, but when he shook hands with Wright, the corporal winced from the grip strength. "What should we call you?" Torres asked. "Subject 47 is not much of a name." The boy thought about this. "I do not know. What names do soldiers have?" "Good, strong names," Martinez said with a smile. "How about Jake? Jake Morrison?" The boy nodded. "Jake Morrison. I like that." From that day on, Subject 47 became Jake Morrison. Jackson decided to test Jake's abilities himself. They went to the training ground where soldiers practiced fighting. Jackson handed Jake a rifle and showed him how to hold it. "This weapon has been used by human soldiers for 50 years, Jackson said. "It takes months to learn to shoot well." Jake held the rifle and looked down the sight. He pulled the trigger once, twice, 3 times. All 3 shots hit the center of the target 200 yards away. Beginner's luck, Wright muttered. Jackson moved the target to 500 yards. Jake hit the center again. They moved it to 800 yards. Jake never missed. But what impressed the soldiers most was not Jake's shooting. It was what happened during the Zephyrian probe attack. The alarm sirens wailed through the facility. Red lights flashed in every hallway. A single Zephyrian scout ship had found their hidden base and was scanning their defenses. It would call for backup unless they stopped it quickly. Jake was in the cafeteria with Torres when the attack began. The building shook as energy beams hit the outer walls. Through the windows, they could see the sleek alien ship hovering above the trees. "Stay down," Torres ordered Jake. "This is not a drill." But Jake did not stay down. He saw medics carrying wounded soldiers past the cafeteria windows. One man was bleeding badly from a beam wound to his chest. Another woman was unconscious from a falling piece of concrete. Jake stood up and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Torres called. "People are hurt," Jake said simply. "I can help." Torres tried to stop him, but Jake was already running toward the medical bay. He moved faster than any human Torres had ever seen. Jake reached the wounded soldiers before the medics could get them inside. The man with the chest wound was heavy, but Jake lifted him like he weighed nothing. He carried the man to safety while energy beams exploded around them. Then he went back for the unconscious woman. "Get to cover," Martinez shouted at Jake as she ran past with her rifle. "After I help them," Jake called back. He spent the next hour helping wounded soldiers while the battle raged outside. He carried men twice his size to safety. He helped doctors move equipment when the medical bay lost power. He never seemed afraid, even when pieces of the ceiling fell around him. When Jackson's soldiers finally destroyed the scout ship, they found Jake in the medical bay. He was holding a cup of water for a wounded private who could not lift his arms. Jackson watched from the doorway. This was not what he had expected from a lab-created weapon. Jake had not fought the enemy. He had not used his great strength to destroy things. Instead, he had chosen to save people. "That boy is not just a weapon," Martinez said quietly to Jackson. "He cares about people." Jackson nodded. "Maybe that is exactly what we need." Dr. Amanda Clark was not happy about what happened during the attack. "He was supposed to stay in the safe areas," she told Jackson. "We cannot risk losing him." "He was not in danger," Jackson replied, "and he saved lives today. That tells me more about what he really is than any of your tests." That night, Jake sat with Torres in the soldiers' common room. They were watching an old movie about cowboys on a small screen. "Why did you help those people today?" Torres asked. "You could have been hurt." Jake thought about this question for a long time. "When I see someone in pain, something inside me wants to make it stop. Is that wrong?" Torres smiled. "No, Jake. That is exactly right. That is what makes someone human." Jake looked confused. "But I am not human. I was made in a laboratory." "Maybe," Torres said. "But you have a human heart, and sometimes that is more important than where you came from." Outside their window, the stars shone down on the hidden facility. Somewhere among those stars, the Zephyrian Empire was planning their next attack. Earth needed soldiers who could fight impossible battles and win. But maybe, Jackson thought as he watched Jake laugh at something funny in the movie, they needed something else too. Maybe they needed someone who would choose to save people instead of just destroying enemies. Amanda Clark went to sleep that night with mixed feelings. Her creation was perfect in every way she had planned. But Jake Morrison was becoming something she had never intended to create. He was becoming human. 3 weeks after the probe attack, Colonel Jackson made a decision that would change everything. He walked into Dr. Clark's office with official orders from Earth Command. "We are taking Jake off-world for real combat training," Jackson announced. "High Command wants him ready for active duty." Amanda looked up from her research files. "Absolutely not. He needs at least 6 more months of controlled testing. We do not know how his enhanced genetics will react to different environments." "The war will not wait 6 months," Jackson replied. "The Zephyrians just took the Centauri colonies. We lost 40,000 people in 3 days. Jake could have made a difference there." Amanda stood up, her face red with anger. "He is still A child, Colonel. You cannot just throw him into battle like a weapon. He is the weapon you made him to be, Jackson said quietly. But maybe he can be something more. My soldiers will teach him what your laboratory never could. The argument lasted 2 hours, but Jackson had the backing of Earth Command. That afternoon, Jake packed his few belongings into a military bag. He had never owned much. Some clothes that fit his small frame, a few books Torres had given him, and a photo of the medical staff he had helped during the attack. Where are we going? Jake asked Martinez as they boarded the transport ship. Titan Defense Grid first, she replied. Lots of military outposts there. Good place to learn the basics without too much danger. The transport ship was nothing like the clean laboratory Jake knew. It smelled of oil and metal. The walls were scratched and dented from years of use. Jake loved it immediately. It felt real, in a way the sterile facility never had. Wright taught Jake how to play cards during the long journey to Titan. Torres showed him how soldiers cleaned their weapons and maintained their gear. Martinez explained military ranks and how orders moved through the chain of command. But it was Colonel Jackson who taught Jake the most important lessons. Being strong is not enough, Jackson told him one evening as they stood in the ship's observation deck. Through the window they could see Saturn's rings glowing in the distance. Any fool can break things. A real soldier knows when to fight and when to hold back. How do you know the difference? Jake asked. Jackson was quiet for a moment. You think about what you are fighting for. If you are fighting to protect people, then you fight smart and careful. If you are fighting just to win, then you have already lost something important. Their first stop was Outpost 7, a small base on Titan's northern ice fields. The base commander, Major Kate Sullivan, was not happy to see them. You brought a child to a military installation? She asked Jackson privately. I brought a soldier, Jackson replied. Give him a chance. Jake proved himself quickly. He learned to use every weapon in the armory in just 2 days. He memorized the base layout, defensive positions, and emergency procedures in hours. But what impressed the base personnel most was his willingness to help with everything. Jake volunteered for kitchen duty, helped repair damaged equipment, and stood guard shifts with soldiers twice his age. He never complained about boring work or asked for special treatment. Corporal Ben Wright became Jake's closest friend during those weeks on Titan. Wright was only 22 himself, young enough to remember what it felt like to be far from home and unsure of yourself. Why do you always volunteer for extra duty? Wright asked Jake one night as they cleaned rifles together. I want to be useful, Jake replied. Everyone here has a purpose. I want to have one too. Wright smiled. You already do, kid. You just have not figured it out yet. The lesson came during their 3rd week at Outpost 7. A civilian transport ship sent out a distress signal. Zephyrian raiders had damaged their engines, and they were drifting toward Titan's atmosphere. Without help, 200 civilians would burn up during re-entry. Major Sullivan ordered a rescue mission, but it was dangerous. The civilian ship was in an unstable orbit. Any rescue craft would have to match its tumbling motion perfectly while evacuating people as fast as possible. I volunteer for the mission, Jake told Sullivan. You are not qualified for space rescue operations, she replied. I learn fast, Jake said simply. Sullivan looked at Jackson, who nodded. Let him try. Jake studied the rescue procedures for 30 minutes. He watched video recordings of similar missions. He practiced the maneuvers in a simulator twice. Then, he climbed into the rescue craft with Wright and Martinez. The civilian ship was spinning slowly end over end. Its hull was cracked and atmosphere was leaking out. Through the viewports, they could see terrified faces pressed against the windows. This is going to be tricky, Martinez said as she piloted their craft closer. We have to match their rotation, exactly, or we will crash into them. Jake watched the spinning ship with intense concentration. After a few moments, he spoke up. I can see the pattern. They rotate once every 47 seconds. The docking port comes around at the 32-second mark each time. Martinez tried 3 times to dock with the spinning ship. Each time, she came close but could not quite match the motion. The ships bumped together, but the seals would not lock. Let me try, Jake said. Martinez looked at Wright, who shrugged. He has been right about everything else so far. Jake took the controls. His enhanced reflexes let him feel every tiny movement of both ships. On his first attempt, the docking seals locked perfectly. They evacuated all 200 civilians in 40 minutes. Jake carried elderly passengers and small children across the connecting tunnel between ships. When a section of the civilian ship lost pressure, he held the emergency seal in place with his bare hands while others escaped. The last person they rescued was a little girl, maybe 6 years old. She was scared and crying for her parents, who were already safe on the rescue ship. "It is okay," Jake told her gently. "Your mom and dad are waiting for you." "Are you a superhero?" the girl asked through her tears. Jake thought about this. "No, I am just a soldier, but I promise I will keep you safe." When they returned to Outpost 7, Major Sullivan looked at Jake with new respect. "That was exceptional work out there." "Right, and Martinez did most of it," Jake replied. "I just helped." That night, the rescued civilians sent a message to the base. It was from the little girl's parents thanking Jake for saving their daughter. The message included a picture the girl had drawn. It showed a tall soldier holding a small child, with stars all around them. Jake stared at the picture for a long time. Torres found him in the common room at midnight, still looking at it. "First time someone called you a hero?" Torres asked. "I am not a hero," Jake said. "Heroes are people like Wright and Martinez. They chose to risk their lives to save others. I was just made this way." Torres sat down beside him. "You think being made in a lab means your choices do not count?" "Do they?" Jake asked. "Kid, I have seen a lot of soldiers. Some were born brave, some learned to be brave, and some were just following orders. What matters is not how you got your courage. What matters is what you do with it." The next morning brought terrible news. A Zephyrian attack force had hit the civilian convoy routes near Europa Station. 3 ships full of families were destroyed. The enemy was getting bolder, striking deeper into human space. But there was worse news. Intelligence reports showed that the Zephyrians had detected something new during their raids. Their bioscanners had picked up genetic signatures that did not match normal human patterns. They knew about Jake. Dr. Clark arrived at Outpost 7 2 days later with a team of scientists and disturbing information. She looked tired and worried as she spoke to Colonel Jackson and Jake in the base's secure briefing room. The Genesis project was not the only enhanced human program, she said quietly. There were 3 others, running in parallel. They succeeded, too. Jake felt something cold in his stomach. "You mean there are others like me?" Amanda nodded. 3 others. They call themselves Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. They have been deployed as a special strike force. Their mission record is troubling. She activated a holographic display showing battle reports. Cities burned to the ground. Zephyrian military bases destroyed along with everything for miles around them. Civilian casualties in the millions. "They are effective," Amanda continued. "But they show no restraint, no mercy. They were raised differently than you, Jake. They see compassion as weakness." Colonel Jackson studied the reports with a grim expression. "Where were they trained?" "They never left the laboratory," Amanda replied. "They were educated by computers and combat simulations. They know only war." Jake stared at the images of destruction. Somewhere out there were 3 beings like him, but without the lessons Torres had taught him about kindness. Without rights, friendship, or Martinez's guidance. Without Jackson's wisdom about what soldiers really fought for. "They want to meet you," Amanda said to Jake. "High Command is arranging for all enhanced subjects to work together on future missions." Jake looked at the picture the little girl had drawn, still folded in his pocket. Then he looked at the battle reports showing cities full of dead civilians. "What, if I do not want to meet them?" he asked. Amanda and Jackson exchanged glances. Neither of them had a good answer for that question. The meeting happened on Kepler 442b, a planet with 2 suns and purple grass that grew as tall as trees. The human colony of New Portland sat in a valley between 2 mountain ranges. It was home to 50,000 farmers and their families who grew food for the outer colonies. The Zephyrians wanted New Portland badly. The planet's soil could grow crops that fed millions. If they took it, dozens of human worlds would starve. Jake stood with Colonel Jackson on the landing platform as 3 ships touched down. The ships were black and sleek, unlike the worn military transports Jake was used to. No markings showed which unit they belonged to. No scratches or dents marked them from years of service. The first person to step out was tall and broad-shouldered with short blonde hair. He moved like a predator, every step careful and controlled. His uniform was perfect, without a single wrinkle or stain. This was Alpha, though he called himself Victor Kane. Behind him came a woman with red hair pulled back in a tight bun. She was smaller than Victor, but Jake could see the dangerous way she held herself. Her green eyes looked at everything like she was planning how to destroy it. This was Beta, who called herself Nova Price. The third one made Jake's skin crawl. He looked exactly like Jake's age, but his eyes were old and empty. He wore no expression at all, as if feeling anything was a waste of time. He had no name except Gamma, but the others called him Zero. "So you are the famous Subject 47, Victor said as he approached Jake. His voice was calm and cold. The one they let play soldier with the regular humans. "My name is Jake Morrison," Jake replied. "And these are not regular humans. They are my friends." Nova laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Friends? You think these weak creatures care about you? You are a weapon, just like us. Stop pretending to be something you are not." Zero said nothing. He just stared at Jake with those empty eyes like he was studying an insect. Colonel Jackson stepped forward. "You must be the Trinity Strike Force. I have read your mission reports." "Have you?" Victor asked. "Then you know we get results. We end wars quickly and permanently." "By killing civilians," Jackson said quietly. "By winning," Nova replied. "War is not about making friends. It is about making the enemy surrender or die." They walked to the command center where holographic maps showed the Zephyrian positions around New Portland. The alien forces had surrounded the valley, but had not attacked yet. Intelligence said they were waiting for reinforcements. "The mission is simple," Victor announced to the gathered officers. "We destroy their staging areas before they can attack the colony. Fast, efficient, total victory." He touched the holographic display and red markers appeared over 6 locations. "Orbital bombardment here, here, and here. Ground assault teams hit these 3 positions. Everything dies. War over." Jake studied the map and felt sick. Those positions are right next to civilian areas. There are Zephyrian families in those settlements too. "Acceptable losses," Zero spoke for the first time. His voice was flat and emotionless. "Enemy non-combatants are still enemies. They are children," Jake said, his voice rising. "Families, people who just want to live their lives." Nova looked at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "You have been contaminated by human weakness. Dr. Clark warned us this might happen if we left you with normal soldiers too long." "It is not weakness," Sergeant Martinez said from across the room. "It is called having a conscience." Victor turned to look at Martinez with cold interest. "Sergeant Lisa Martinez. Efficiency, rating 73%. Combat experience limited to defensive actions. Psychological profile shows excessive concern for civilian casualties." Martinez stared back at him. "How do you know my personal files?" "We know everything about everyone who has influenced Subject 47, Nova replied. "Including Private First, Class Danny Torres, killed in action 6 months ago during a rescue mission that should have been classified as too dangerous to attempt." Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "Torres is not dead, he is back at Titan Base." "Check your communications," Zero said in that empty voice. "No messages from Torres in 6 months, no video calls. Colonel Jackson has been hiding it from you." Jake looked at Jackson, who had gone very pale. "Is it true?" Jackson's voice was barely a whisper. "Jake, I wanted to tell you when you were ready. Torres died saving a family from a crashed transport. He gave his life to pull 3 children out of burning wreckage." The command center went silent. Jake felt something break inside his chest. Torres, who had taught him to play cards and explained why cowboys were heroes in old movies. Torres, who said Jake had a human heart, dead for 6 months while Jake thought he was safe at a training base. You see, Victor said gently, almost kindly. This is what caring about humans gets you. Pain, loss, distraction from your real purpose. Torres died because he chose to save people, Jake said through his tears. That does not make caring wrong. That makes him a hero. It makes him dead, Nova replied. Heroes are just people who die for stupid reasons. The argument was interrupted by alarms. Zephyrian ships were moving toward the colony. The attack was starting early. In the command bunker, they watched the enemy forces advance. Thousands of alien soldiers in powered armor marched across the purple grasslands. Their weapons could cut through the colony's defenses like paper. Perfect, Victor said, smiling for the first time. We can test our different approaches to warfare. He pointed to the northern approach where Zephyrian ground forces were advancing. We will take the direct route. Orbital bombardment followed, by ground termination of survivors. What about the civilian settlements in that area? Jake asked. What about them? Zero replied. Jake watched the tactical display as Victor's plan unfolded. The Trinity Strike Force moved with mechanical precision. Their orbital weapons turned 3 square miles of grassland into smoking craters. Everything in those areas died instantly. Zephyrian soldiers, yes, but also Zephyrian civilians who had been trying to evacuate. Then Victor, Nova, and Zero dropped into the combat zone. They moved through the remaining Zephyrian positions like death itself. No mercy, no prisoners, no questions asked. They killed wounded enemies who could not fight back. They destroyed medical stations treating injured civilians. Jake watched in horror as they completed their mission in under 2 hours. The northern front was completely cleared of enemies. It was also completely cleared of everything else. Efficient, Colonel Jackson said quietly, and monstrous. Jake made his choice. He grabbed his rifle and headed for the door. Where are you going? Jackson called. The eastern approach still has enemy forces, Jake replied. And there are civilian refugees trying to escape through that area. I am going to protect them. The Trinity Force cleared their objectives, Jackson said. Command says to wait for further orders. Jake stopped at the door and looked back at his commanding officer. Torres did not wait for orders when those children needed help. Neither will I. Jake spent the next 4 hours fighting a very different kind of battle than his enhanced siblings. When he encountered Zephyrian soldiers, he tried to capture them, instead of killing them. When he found wounded enemies, he gave them medical aid. When Zephyrian civilians crossed his path, he helped them reach safety zones. It was harder than just destroying everything. It took longer and put him at greater risk. But when the battle ended, Jake had saved 47 Zephyrian civilians, including 12 children. He had also captured 15 enemy soldiers who provided valuable intelligence about future attacks. Victor found Jake as the sun set over the battlefield. The enhanced soldier looked at the group of Zephyrian refugees Jake was guarding. You saved the enemy, Victor said with disgust. You chose alien lives over human victory. I chose to be better than my programming, Jake replied. You chose to be weak, Nova said as she joined them. Dr. Clark was right to be concerned about your development. Zero appeared silently beside them as he always did. You are broken, Subject 47. Your emotional attachments make you unreliable. My name is Jake Morrison, Jake said firmly. And my emotions make me human. You are not human, Victor said coldly. None of us are. We are weapons created to win a war. Start acting like it. Or what? Jake asked. Victor smiled, and it was the most frightening thing Jake had ever seen. Or we will fix your programming ourselves. That night, as Jake helped set up refugee camps for the Zephyrian civilians, he realized the truth. The Trinity Strike. Force was not just ruthlessly efficient. They were everything he could have become if Torres had never taught him to care. If Wright had never shown him friendship. If Martinez had never demonstrated courage with compassion. If Jackson had never explained what soldiers really fought for, they were him, but without a soul, and now they thought he was broken and needed to be repaired. Jake looked up at the alien stars and wondered if he would live long enough to save anyone else. Jake knew they were hunting him long before he saw their ships. The Trinity Strike Force had declared him a traitor to humanity after the battle on Kepler 442b. High Command agreed with them. Jake Morrison was now officially a rogue-enhanced subject who needed to be brought back for reprogramming. Colonel Jackson made the hardest decision of his military career. 3 days after the New Portland incident, he stole a prototype stealth ship called the Night Runner and went rogue with his remaining unit. Jake, Jackson, Corporal Wright, and 6 other soldiers became fugitives overnight. "We could have stayed," Wright said as they drifted through the asteroid belt near Proxima Station. "We could have tried to reason with Command." "Command stopped listening to reason when they saw the Trinity Force's efficiency ratings," Jackson replied. "All they care about now is winning the war quickly. They do not care how many innocents die in the process." Jake sat in the ship's small, common area, staring at old photos on a handheld device. Pictures of Torres teaching him to play cards, Martinez showing him how to clean a rifle properly, the little girl from the rescue mission holding her drawing of a soldier and a child among the stars. "I made them all targets," Jake said quietly. "Dr. Clark, the people at Blackwater, even you. All because I would not become what they wanted." "You became something better," Jackson said. "And that scares them more than any Zephyrian weapon ever could." Their stolen ship was fast and hard to detect, but it was not built for long-term living. Food ran low after 2 weeks. The air recyclers needed parts they could not get. Worst of all, they were completely alone in a galaxy where both sides wanted them dead. Everything changed when they tried to rescue civilians from Proxima Station. The station was under attack by a small Zephyrian force. Not a major assault, just raiders looking for supplies and prisoners. The kind of attack that happened every week somewhere in human space. Usually, military ships would arrive too late to help and find only wreckage. Jake convinced Jackson to intervene. "We can save those people, isn't that what Torres would have done?" They arrived at Proxima Station as the raiders were loading prisoners onto their ships. Jake went in alone, using ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels to move through the station unseen. His plan was simple: free the prisoners and get out before the raiders knew what happened. But when Jake reached the prisoner holding area, he found something unexpected. The Zephyrian raid leader was not what he expected at all. The alien was tall and thin with gray-blue skin and 4 arms. But what surprised Jake was the careful way he treated the human prisoners. No beatings, no torture, no unnecessary cruelty. The Zephyrian even provided medical care for an injured human child. When the alien noticed Jake hiding in the shadows, he did not raise an alarm. Instead, he made a gesture that somehow meant, "Wait," in any language. "You are the one they call Jake Morrison," the Zephyrian said in careful English. "The enhanced human who saves civilians." "How do you know who I am?" Jake asked, staying ready to fight. "Because I am very much like you," the alien replied. "My name is Vorthak. I was also created in a laboratory to be a perfect weapon, but I learned to question why we fight." Vorthak explained everything while his soldiers continued loading supplies from the station. The Zephyrian Empire was not what humans believed. They were refugees themselves, fleeing from something much worse. "The Void Seekers," Vorthak said. "Ancient machines that consume entire star systems. They turn planets into metal and energy to build more of themselves. My people have been running from them for 50 years. "Then why are you fighting us?" Jake asked. "Because the Void Seekers are already here," Vorthak replied. "They have agents among both our species. They wanted us to weaken each other with war before they arrive in force." Jake felt his world turn upside down. "You mean this whole war is a lie?" "Not a lie, but not what either side believes it is. The Void Seekers have been manipulating our leaders, making us see each other as threats, while the real enemy prepares to destroy us both." Vorthak showed Jake data recordings from Zephyrian deep space monitors. Massive ships moving between the stars, too large to be natural. energy signatures that matched no known technology. Planets going dark one by one as something consumed them completely. In 6 months, maybe less, they will arrive in this sector, Vorthak said. When they do, it will not matter who won our war. We will all die unless we work together. Jake stared at the data, trying to understand what it meant. Why are you telling me this? Because you are like me, a weapon who chose to think instead of just following orders. Maybe together we can convince our people to stop fighting each other and fight the real enemy. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms. The Trinity Strike Force had found them. Victor Kane's voice came over the station's communication system. Subject 47, you have 30 seconds to surrender before we begin orbital bombardment. The alien ship and everyone on this station will be destroyed unless you give yourself up. Jake looked at Vorthak, who was already ordering his soldiers to evacuate. They will kill everyone here just to capture me. Then we must ensure they do not succeed. Vorthak replied. He made a quick decision that changed everything. My ship has stealth capabilities. We can escape together and plan how to warn both our peoples. You would trust a human? Jake asked. I would trust someone who saves civilians instead of killing them, Vorthak replied. Jake made the hardest choice of his life. He sent a message to Colonel Jackson telling him to run and never look back. Then he boarded the Zephyrian ship with Vorthak just as the Trinity Strike Force began their attack. They escaped, but Jake watched through the ship's sensors as Victor, Nova, and Zero systematically destroyed everything on Proxima Station. They were looking for Jake, but when they could not find him, they decided to eliminate all witnesses instead. 200 human civilians died in the bombardment. The Trinity Strike Force reported it as a complete victory against Zephyrian raiders. Now, you see what your people have become, Vorthak said sadly as they watched the station burn. Not my people, Jake replied. Those three are what I refuse to become. For the next month, Jake and Vorthak worked together in secret. They gathered evidence about Void Seeker infiltration in both human and Zephyrian governments. They found proof that key military leaders on both sides were either Void Seeker agents or being manipulated by them. But the evidence was not enough. They needed to stop an active Void Seeker operation to prove the threat was real. They found their chance when Vorthak intercepted communications about Operation Clean Slate. The Trinity Strike Force had convinced High Command to use captured Void Seeker technology to create planet-killing weapons. The plan was to destroy all major Zephyrian worlds in a single coordinated strike. It is a trap, Vorthak explained. The Void Seekers want your people to use their technology. Once activated, those weapons will turn on human worlds too. Both our species will be destroyed, and the Void Seekers will claim this entire sector without firing a shot. Jake realized he had to stop the Trinity Strike Force, even if it meant fighting his own kind. But first, he had one last message to send. He broadcast on all human military frequencies, knowing the Trinity Force would trace the signal back to him. My name is Jake Morrison. I was Subject 47 of the Genesis Project. I am sending this message to warn humanity about the real enemy. The war with the Zephyrians is a lie. The true threat comes from ancient machines called Void Seekers, and they are already here. The broadcast lasted 30 seconds before the Trinity Force cut the signal. But it was enough. Somewhere in human space, people heard the warning. Some would dismiss it as the words of a traitor, but others would remember and start asking questions. Victor Kane's reply came an hour later on the same frequency. Subject 47, you have been contaminated beyond repair. Report for immediate termination or we will hunt down every human who ever showed you kindness. Starting with Colonel Jackson. Jake looked at Vorthak, who had listened to the exchange with growing alarm. They are not bluffing, the Zephyrian said. Your enhanced siblings will kill anyone connected to you. Then I have to stop them, Jake said, even if it kills me. You cannot fight them alone, Vorthak replied. But perhaps you do not have to. He activated a communication device that reached deep into Zephyrian space. Within minutes, responses came back from Zephyrian ships across the sector, commanders who were tired of endless war and willing to listen to new ideas. It seems I am not the only one of my kind who questions orders, Vorthak said with something that might have been a smile. We have allies, Jake Morrison. The question is whether we have enough time to save both our species. Outside their ship, the stars looked the same as always. But Jake knew that somewhere among them, ancient machines were preparing for the final harvest. And the only thing standing between two species and extinction was a boy who had been born in a laboratory, but raised by soldiers to care about more than just winning. The final battle began where everything started, in Earth's solar system. The Trinity Strike Force had captured Colonel Jackson and was using him as bait to force Jake's surrender. They held him on Luna Base, the military installation that controlled Earth's defenses. Jake knew it was a trap. Victor, Nova, and Zero were too smart to leave anything to chance, but he could not abandon the man who had taught him what it meant to be a soldier. This is suicide, Vorthak said as their combined human Zephyrian fleet approached Earth. They want you to come. They are prepared for everything. Maybe, Jake replied, but they are not prepared for everything I learned from my real family. The fleet was small but determined. 12 human ships whose crews had heard Jake's broadcast and chosen to believe him. 8 Zephyrian vessels commanded by officers like Vorthak, who were tired of endless war. And 1 stolen stealth ship carrying the most important cargo in the galaxy. Dr. Amanda Clark had sent Jake a coded message before the Trinity Strike Force captured her too. Hidden in her research files was the truth about Operation Clean Slate. The Planet Killer weapons were not just using Void Seeker technology, they were Void Seeker technology, disguised to look like human innovations. The moment they activate those weapons, the Void Seekers will take control, Amanda's message explained. The weapons will turn on human worlds instead of Zephyrian ones. Both species will be destroyed in a single day. But Amanda had also discovered something else. The enhanced subjects all had control protocols buried in their genetic code. Protocols that could force them to obey any order without question. The Trinity Strike Force had learned to use these protocols on each other, but they did not know Jake had found a way to resist them. How? Vorthak asked when Jake explained his plan. Torres taught me that being human is about choosing to do the right thing even when it hurts, Jake said. Every time the protocols try to take over, I remember that lesson. I remember why I fight. The battle for Luna Base was unlike anything the solar system had ever seen. The Trinity Strike Force had turned the moon into a fortress, with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But Jake's alliance did not fight like a normal military force. Instead of trying to overwhelm the defenses, they used the one advantage the Trinity Force never expected: cooperation between former enemies. Human ships provided cover, while Zephyrian vessels used their advanced shields to protect the rescue teams. Former adversaries worked together with perfect coordination. Jake reached Luna Base using the same stealth ship that had helped him escape months earlier. He moved through the base's corridors like a ghost, avoiding the enhanced soldiers who patrolled every hallway. He found Colonel Jackson in the detention center, beaten, but alive. The older man's eyes lit up when he saw Jake. "You should not have come," Jackson whispered as Jake cut his restraints. "They are planning something terrible." "I know about Operation Clean Slate," Jake replied. "We have to stop them. They made it halfway to the command center before the Trinity Force found them." Victor Kane stepped out of the shadows with that cold smile Jake remembered too well. Subject 47. You finally came home. The fight that followed shook the entire base. Jake and Victor were evenly matched in strength and speed, but Victor had no restraint. He tried to kill Jackson first, knowing that would break Jake's concentration. Jake threw himself between Victor and the colonel, taking a blow that would have killed a normal human. Pain exploded through his chest, but he stayed standing. "You always were too sentimental," Victor said as he prepared to strike again. "And you never learned what strength really means," Jake replied. Nova and Zero arrived as Jake and Victor continued their battle. The 3 enhanced soldiers surrounded Jake and Jackson with mechanical precision. They were about to activate the control protocols that would force Jake to obey when something unexpected happened. Vorthak crashed through the command center's main window, followed by a team of human and Zephyrian soldiers working together. The sight of former enemies fighting side by side shocked the Trinity Force into hesitation. "This is impossible," Nova said, staring at the mixed unit. "Humans and Zephyrians cannot work together." "They can when they choose to be better than their programming," Jake said. The final confrontation took place in the command center where Operation Clean Slate was being prepared for launch. Massive screens showed the planet-killer weapons in orbit around Earth, ready to fire on every major Zephyrian world. Victor activated the weapons manually, smiling as he did. "Even if you stop us, it is too late. The weapons are already launching." Jake watched in horror as the planet killers began moving toward their targets. In 6 hours, billions of Zephyrians would die. And according to Dr. Clark's research, the weapons would then turn on human worlds. "There is only one way to stop them," Amanda Clark said over the communication system. She had escaped her captors and reached the main computer core. "The weapons are controlled by a central command signal. If someone with the right genetic codes gets close enough to the source, they can redirect the weapons." "Where is the source?" Jake asked. "The control hub is built into this base," Amanda replied. "But redirecting the weapons will require channeling massive amounts of energy through enhanced neural pathways. It will burn out all genetic modifications permanently." Jake understood. He could save both species, but he would lose everything that made him superhuman. He would become ordinary. "Victor," Kane laughed when he heard this. "Go ahead, Subject 47. Sacrifice your abilities for these weak creatures. Prove that you are as pathetic as we always believed." Jake looked around the command center. At Colonel Jackson, who had taught him about duty and honor. At Vorthak, who had shown him that former enemies could become allies. At the mixed human-Zephyrian team that proved cooperation was possible. "I was never meant to be a weapon," Jake said quietly. "I was meant to be a bridge." He placed his hands on the control hub and felt the energy flow through him like liquid, fire. His enhanced nervous system processed millions of calculations per second, redirecting each planet-killer weapon toward the Void Seeker staging areas hidden throughout the solar system. The pain was beyond description. Jake felt his genetic modifications burning away one by one, his superhuman strength, his enhanced reflexes, his perfect memory, all of it disappearing as the energy consumed his artificial improvements. But it worked. On the screens around them, they watched as the planet-killer weapons struck their new targets. Ancient Void Seeker ships that had been hiding behind asteroids and moons exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The real enemy's invasion fleet was destroyed before it could reveal itself. When the energy flow finally stopped, Jake collapsed to the floor. He was still alive, but he was no longer enhanced. He was just a young man who had learned important lessons from good people. Victor Kane stared at the destruction of the Void Seeker fleet with disbelief. "You destroyed our victory. Humanity could have ruled the galaxy." "Humanity deserves better than rule through fear," Jake said weakly. "They deserve the chance to choose their own path." In the weeks that followed, Jake's sacrifice changed everything. The evidence of Void Seeker manipulation convinced leaders on both sides to end the war. Humans and Zephyrians began working together to defend against future threats. The Trinity, Strike Force, still enhanced but now isolated, disappeared into deep space. They had become the very monsters they were created to fight, weapons without purpose or restraint. Jake Morrison returned to military service as a regular human. He could no longer lift impossible weights or dodge bullets, but he had something more valuable. He had the respect of two species and the knowledge that he had chosen to remain human when it mattered most. Colonel Jackson, now promoted to general, often found Jake in the memorial garden they had built for Torres and Martinez. "Any regrets?" Jackson would ask. Jake would look up at the stars where human and Zephyrian ships patrolled together and shake his head. "Torres once told me that what makes someone human is having the choice to do the right thing even when it hurts. I finally understand what he meant." The boy who had been born in a laboratory but raised by soldiers had saved the galaxy, not by becoming the perfect weapon, but by choosing to remain imperfectly, beautifully human.